What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. Middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Powha on a Friday. And, of course, we're heading into the Christmas holidays next week. So, again, if you are sending Christmas gifts by delivery service, FedEx, U.S. Post Office, you're getting down to the wire, and depending upon where you are in the country, Friday's going to be the last day where things can get out. Now, interestingly enough, here in Santa Claus, Indiana, the Santa Claus Post Office has a custom postmark, and people from all over the world literally send letters to the post office to get that postmark and then get sent on back, which is something philatelists like to do. And apparently this year has set a new record, something like close to 500,000. And I was over at the post office the other day trying to get some last-second Christmas gifts mailed, and they were just absolutely jammed trying to get all of that stuff done. So they're working very, very hard. Of course, a week from today, it's all going to be over, and they can take a deep breath and go back to the normal course of doing business here. Now, interestingly enough, yesterday, all of the weather apps on my iPhone, the native weather app that comes with the iPhone, the Weather Channel app, the Weather Bug, were predicting clear skies today. So, of course, we woke up to a solid overcast and snow flurries. It is, in fact, starting to clear right now, but we did have more snow this morning. So I don't know if they can't make this stuff work, why do they put it out there in the first place? And it almost seems like the United States has become very tolerant of products, whether it's apps for the iPhone or TVs or whatever, that don't really perform as advertised. And everybody shrugs and says, oh, well, that's just the way it is. It's part of the deterioration of our culture, along with our bridges and our roads and our rail systems and the rest of it. So that's the way it's going. Okay, we're watching here on the video feed. The House is still debating the impeachment issue and the rules by which they're going to conduct their vote, which is expected to happen at dinner time, East Coast time, which is going to be right toward the end of this show. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. It is, by all apparent means, a study in foregone conclusions. Pelosi has been running around arm-twisting Democrat members of the House of Representatives to vote for impeachment, even those who are concerned that voting for impeachment will cost them re-election next year. And Nancy Pelosi is out there saying, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We'll make sure you got enough money. We'll rig the elections so that you get to come on back to the House of Representatives. So it's really kind of ugly here. Now, Trump is on his way to a new rally. He did fire off a rather acerbic letter to Pelosi earlier in the day, in which he basically said the Salem witch trials had more due process than this impeachment. And he's absolutely right about that. If you look at the way Adam Schiff set up the rules for the House inquiry, where the GOP were not allowed to cross-examine, they were not allowed to call their own witnesses. It really is, it's a kangaroo court. And so we're looking at this article that came out of Investment Watch blog, basically saying that the impeachment debacle is a failed coup on our legitimate government. And I don't know about failed yet. They're probably presuming the Senate is not going to remove Trump from office, which right now is basically a given. But we don't know what back channel deals are being made. We don't know what arm twisting is going on. We don't know what blackmail information is being applied. So at this point, I would say, it's not a guarantee that this thing is going to end with the Senate trial. They could actually find a way to get the Senate to vote to remove Donald Trump, and that would basically clear the decks for Hillary's comeback in 2020, which is what I think this has been all about. because the Democrats have been after Trump, tooth and nail ever since his victory in 2016. His real crime that he's being impeached for is that he beat Hillary Clinton. And Hillary thought it was her turn to be president, and it just didn't work on out. And Hillary cannot accept the fact that the voters just don't like her. So they've loaded up the country with a whole new batch of voters called the illegal immigrants. And by hook or by crook, mostly by crook, she thinks she's going to be coming back to win the White House. And when she does, okay, she views the American people as having betrayed her in 2016. And she's going to be out for revenge. She's going to find some way to make your lives more miserable than they already are. I can guarantee that's what's going to happen. All right, let's take a phone call from Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Mike. This impeachment thing's on my mind, and Virginia is on my mind, and I think the two are related. And this is why it helps. Last night, ABC ran a story saying that they were, or the Republican, or not Republican, the representative from Virginia said that he's going to go through and arrest all of the sheriffs that are not going to comply with using the National Guard, but not going to comply with the gun confiscation. Now keep that in the back of your head for a moment, just that. While this impeachment thing is going through, and it goes through the Senate, and if the Rhino Republicans do not roll over in the Senate and they actually acquit him, I see the Democrats running to the Supreme Court saying that this is a sham trial. And as that's happening, this is when they're going to unleash Virginia's National Guard to arrest the sheriffs and gun confiscation. If you're going to railroad the country, if you're going to remove a sitting president, you have to remove the guns around D.C.
Yes.
And at the same time this is happening, think about it. Interstate 81 gets shut down, 95 gets shut down, all the Beltway gets shut down. I mean, there you go. That's how they're going to do this. We can't stop this civil war coming. It's coming. It's coming, and it's going to go hot. We tried. It's going to go high. I don't see any way out of this. If I was going to subvert the country, that is how I would do it.
Well, even Rand Paul is out there saying that he sees a civil war coming. Again, I was hoping to avoid that. I've spent the last 25 years of my life on this website and I guess, 11, 12 years on radio to that end of finding a peaceful way, nonviolent way of restoring the republic. But it does look like that the criminal enterprise that is now posing as our government, they're not willing to go peacefully. They're willing to use force of arms. And I understand that Virginia is now looking at a bill which will basically say the government has a right to fire all government officials who refuse to go along with the gun grab. Now, the big question is, on what grounds could they fire the sheriffs who are elected officials? And it could get very, very ugly before this goes too far.
I think it's already going to go too far. When ABC runs an article saying that they're going to bring in the National Guard to arrest sheriffs for using military force to remove the removement of firearms or the removal of the Second Amendment, not. And we're just not talking about civilians here. We're talking about elected sheriffs. They want to come in and arrest. I see this going on the same time that the Democrats go to the Supreme Court saying this is a sham. And the reason why I say this, I have a real good friend who is the driver for Ruth Bader Ginsburg whenever she goes to her little doctor's appointments and everything. She's a real good friend of mine. She works with Secret Service. Ruth Bader Ginsburg has came out and said, if this goes to the Supreme Court, we're going to remove the president because the Republicans in the Senate have already made their mind up and it's a sham trial. That's out of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's mouth. So, I mean... Well,
that's kind of a hard idea to sell when you look at what happened with Bill Clinton, who had legitimately committed a high crime and was impeached by the House of Representatives, and then the Senate, same day, voted to say, we acquit him, he's off the hook. And it looks like the same thing is going to happen to Donald Trump, barring the unexpected. But again, the Supreme Court really does not have much to say about it. If you are, in fact, a strict constitutionalist, which we understand Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not, and it's all a case about, we want our side to win. Forget what the voters want. Forget what the American people need. It's a case of us versus them. And if you're not with us, you're the enemy. And that kind of polarized mindset where, we're out to get our way and we're going to do whatever it takes to get our way. And that's going to be the end of it.
And I agree with what you're saying, but I mean, and like you're saying here, these Democrats, these people that are in Congress and their constituents and their supporters, they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the rule of law. And you said this many, many times. This boils down to an unhappy lady who didn't get elected and she can't stand it. That is what this really boils down to. Hillary throwing a temper tantrum, and she's going to destroy the country because she didn't get her chance in power.
Yes. Oh, and if she gets into power next year, she's still going to destroy the country because that's going to be her revenge on the American voters who didn't vote for her. I mean, this is a very vengeful, vindictive personality. And just look at the dead bodies list if you're not sure about that. So, as a matter of fact, we just got settled in here in Santa Claus. If Hillary runs and actually wins a year from now, Claire and I are already saying, where are we going to go? Costa Rica, maybe? Because we sure as heck can't stay in this country. We're going to be walking around with targets on our back.
I think a lot of us are going to be walking around with targets on our back, especially the type of stuff that we're talking about. Sure, I think we're all a political target. I mean, she's come out before and said that we want to put people in quote-unquote fun camps, whatever that means. But, I mean,
Yeah, this country is in so much trouble. It's in so much danger. And Trump really missed an opportunity to bring about some changes that would not only secure his second term in office, he really is a disappointment. And I'm not opposed to impeachment because I like Trump or anything, but because of the way the process has been perverted by the Democrats.
Yeah, I don't. You're right. I mean, it's not even about Trump. It's about this republic and these people, these Democrats. I think we're in the death throes of our republic. There was a book, and I forget the name of the book, and it started out, "This is the best of times and the worst of times," and I
A Tale of Two Cities.
Yep. I mean, I think we live in good times. Everything's being exposed, but then we live in bad times. Look at the censorship. Look how much in danger if these people actually get in power. Look how much in danger we are. We as people that we're going to be in. I mean, just for standing up for what you believe is right is now wrong. I mean, it's I don't. I just don't know anymore. I mean, I just want to put the word out there. This is something that I see that could possibly play through. And if it does, what's our contingency plan? What's our backup? I mean, keeping on the air and blowing the horn, blowing the whistle, giving this information out only goes so far. Now what? Then what? I mean, it's what do we what do we do?
Well, there are an alarming number of people who are talking civil war, possibly being sparked over in Virginia because of all this gun-grabbing nonsense. And again, the choice of what's going to happen to this country in the future currently rests with those who are in power and whether they're going to comply with the Constitution or not. Because I don't recognize a government that refuses to abide by that Constitution as legitimate, because that Constitution and that Bill of Rights, that is the original contract with America. And it is very alarming how many of our elected officials, including Donald Trump, are just running roughshod over what is best for the American people.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Mike. That's all I wanted to talk to you about today. By the way, Merry Christmas to you and Miss Claire, and I hope you guys have a great and wonderful day, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who have rejoined our network. We're going to go back to the phones to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I got a lot on my mind today, boy. I tell you, but mainly what I want to, put together this impeachment and what's going on in Virginia. And by the way, that caller just before, he was right on. Okay, I believe he called Alex Jones earlier, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this is the deal. First of all, I don't think the Republicans are going to dare to go along and remove Trump, because I think they'd know it would be probably the death knell for the Republican Party. But then again, you never know. With the Epstein case, with so many people being blackmailed, including maybe Justice Roberts, who knows? Now, as far as what's going on in Virginia, I want people to understand something. Okay, and pass the word around. The sheriff is the only real law enforcement officer in the land. Okay? Why? Because he's appointed directly, he's elected directly by the people of the county he serves. They can remove him just as easily as they elect him. He is responsible to the people. He can also form a posse, meaning that he could pretty much deputize as many people as he sees fit to do. In effect, yes, it is the militia that we talk about in the Constitution. At least it's
yes,
part of it. Another thing is this. Whatever you do, folks, make sure your sheriff acts under the Constitution. If not, remove him. And as far as the duties of a sheriff should not be watered down, as they are a lot of places, especially in the Northeast. Let me tell you the duties of a sheriff. The sheriff should be responsible for all patrol of unincorporated areas of a county.
Yes.
Should be responsible for the patrol of all county roads and even the state highways within a county. He should be responsible for security of the county and state courthouses and all prisoners within. He should be responsible for the security of the county jail and transportation from that county jail to and from the courthouse or any other places the inmate has to go. He should also be responsible for all criminal and civil processes coming out of the court. That's the duties of a sheriff. Besides being responsible, anytime they take away responsibilities, such as, and you talk about Fairfax County, where they create a county police, and they've done it in a lot of other places. New York, the sheriff is almost an acronym already. Pennsylvania is even worse than New York. It's almost non-existent anymore, the sheriff's department. Connecticut, the same thing. Don't let them water down the duties of your sheriff. You make sure nobody takes over his patrol responsibilities. Make sure your courthouse is secured and your judges are secured by the sheriff. Make sure your jails are secured by the sheriff. Don't give in an inch, because now we are finding out how important. This could come down to, I don't know about civil war, but definitely a real civil insurrection. And by the way, the sheriff would then have the color of law behind him, because he has every right to deputize as many people as he wants.
Yes.
So the fact that they're threatening these sheriffs in Virginia is a crime. Now, I'd like to see Trump, though I don't expect to, because the guy doesn't have the guts to do it, I don't think, or the knowledge. He should tell these sheriffs, he should tell these so-called officials there in Virginia, if you dare come after you dare to try to use the National Guard to attack these sheriffs, we're going to send in federal troops to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mark.
Period.
Mark, stay on the line. We're going to put you on
I'm right here.
Going to bring you back after these words from our sponsors. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina about the impeachment, about this gun grab that's going on in Virginia and the backlash against that. And what's really surprising, first of all, Virginia traditionally has been a very pro-gun state. They've traditionally been a conservative Republican state. A lot of people are starting to say, just how is it that the Democrats managed to seize power? And of course, once they seized power, the first thing they tried to do was say, we're going to take away all your guns. And now they're looking at this bill that says that any state employee, any official, will be fired for not supporting the gun grab. So this really appears to be the start of a hardline approach regarding gun rights. And again, all of it is a violation of the Second Amendment. And frankly, at this point, given the pushback that we're seeing among the sheriffs and the people of Virginia, I think that in all probability, there'll be a staged mass shooting in Virginia so the government could say, see, this is why we need to take away the guns.
Well, Mike, can I just say, the thing is, when you really look at what's going on with the sheriff and all that, remember the Bundy Ranch? What happened?
Yes.
I'm sure you do. What happened to the Bundy Ranch? Mr. Bundy, Cliven Bundy, actually practically begged the sheriff to do his job and start arresting these phony cops or whatever they were trying to be, from the BLA, the Bureau of Land Management.
Yes.
To arrest them for what they were doing, for trespassing on his land, for trying to force him off his land. He practically begged the sheriff, who was Lombardo, by the way, I believe, the same jerk who, corrupt jerk who was being blackmailed by the FBI during the Vegas shooting.
Yes.
Okay? This is, so like I said, this is an example of a sheriff that's not a constitutional sheriff, but yet a big city like Vegas puts up with him. Same thing with Sheriff Israel there in Cowards County there.
Yes.
Basically, I believe, was blackmailed by the FBI. All right, and while they conducted that shooting at the school, this is the problem. You need to have the people need to be very concerned about who their sheriff is. It's the most important elected official within a county and probably within a state, because we're seeing it now. What they're trying to do in Virginia. By the way, they have no right to fire the sheriff. No right. They cannot fire the sheriff. He's elected by the people.
That's right.
Absolutely no right. Only the people can get rid of him. If he's committed a crime, yeah, I guess there's a way they can impeach him. But it's not easy. Right? And that's one of the things even in Florida. I believe they did get rid of Sheriff Israel. I believe the governor did. And he had no bit, as corrupt as Israel is and was, it's not up to the governor to get rid of a sheriff. It's up to the people. Okay? People don't understand this. This is our Constitution, and this is the only, like I said, the only real law enforcement agency that deserves the respect of the people in this country. Okay? Because they're elected by us. They're not appointed by some other political hack like a mayor, a governor, or even federal people, like even the president. We're elected directly by the people. So, I don't know, Mike. People got to get it together and start understanding their rights.
Yes.
Understanding what this country is based on. Because what they're doing in Virginia now, what they're threatening to do with Virginia is, and by the way, the reason why Virginia became the way it is today is not because of the majority of Virginia. The majority of Virginia are wonderful, just like here in North Carolina. The problem is the most populated counties now are in places like Fairfax, which is, of course, a suburb of Washington, D.C., and even other counties close to Washington where where federal employees are moving in by the drove. Not only federal employees, federal contractors, people who have really nothing to do with Virginia other than they're living there now, okay, because they want to get out of D.C. or whatever else. They're making things so. And what happens is, as more and more of them move in, people move further and further out and start commuting further and further away because everything close to Washington, D.C. becomes unaffordable unless you're really, practically rich. You actually just about have to be rich. You have to move further and further out, and then this is what happened. The people of the original people of Virginia are they're then being forced out and moving to other counties.
Yes.
The majority of counties in Virginia are still, good, law-abiding, decent people. Believe in the Constitution, believe in the Second Amendment 100%. But the problem is there's just not enough of a population. It's also, I believe what we need is not only not to get rid of the Electoral College, but we need an Electoral College for the states. In other words, where the counties count, each county counts as much as another county. So you can prevent what's happening in places like New York, California, now Virginia, and Maryland, where just because you have the population center, you can't dominate the rest of the country. That's about it, Mike. I don't know if you think I'm pretty sure you agree with me.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot, Mark. We're going to let you go here. We're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, many times in the past, both on my website and here on the radio show, I've made reference to the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration, of course, is not considered to be legally binding. It's not the basis for any law. It is merely the statement of separation from the previous government. And there is this one line in the Declaration that we all need to be thinking about right now. And it goes that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. And I hate to say it, but I think we're there. We are really there because our current government is contemptuous of average Americans. They're contemptuous of those who support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And it has brought us to the edge of a new crisis. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take another phone call. Sebastian in Sweden, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. I was just hearing about all the talk about Virginia, and actually I was born in Virginia, in the South Side, and it's a different from the South Side Virginia to Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia, Arlington, Alexandria,
Yes.
Springfield, it's complete. Everyone that lives in D.C., everyone that works, a lot of people that work in D.C., liberals, they live in Virginia.
Yes.
And there are like five
Beautiful
five
country.
cities and counties that are voting. It is. It has three different landscapes: the Tidewater, Piedmont, and the mountainous region. So it's a beautiful country. And the Skyline Drive, I would recommend to anyone to go in the fall and just drive along in the mountains and see the Skyline Drive. And actually, I worked with a guy from Tazewell County, and he invited me for the weekend, and we would go hunting back in the 60s. And the people in Tazewell County, they're really hardcore when it comes to firearms. Actually, everyone in Virginia said it's our right. It's our right to have that. Virginia is the first English colony in Jamestown, 1607. And it's, I think, majority of the presidents were born in Virginia. And it's such a historical state. And I'm so ashamed that it can become liberal, the way it is now. I mean, with a governor that supposedly was put in prison for pedophilia or something back 20 years ago. I don't know. I read it on the internet. I'm not real sure if that's true or not, but you have to look that up. But it's really breaks my heart when I think the United States should get behind Virginia now on this, because it's really important for the people there, to know that they're more, that the whole America would be behind them on this. And I don't know how that's going to happen, if you can, decide on the sanctuary county and other parts of America. But if it comes to if there's a bill coming up to the Supreme Court, and they say that sanctuary Second Amendment is illegal, then they should say the same thing with immigration. So,
Well, the liberals hate
it's
guns, but they love the illegal immigrants because the illegal immigrants are their path to retaining power and grabbing even more of it. The reason they're anti-gun is because they realize they are pushing so hard on the American people, and the American people are starting to push back. And what the citizens of every other state in this country need to realize is if they get away with this in Virginia, your state will be next. This is not just about Virginia. This is about our Second Amendment rights for all Americans. And, you know, only in the area of guns, are the majority of law-abiding Americans punished for the actions of a few, and even those few appear to be basically put up jobs specifically for that propaganda purpose.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that statement, Mike. It's a really bad situation. I've been expatriate for over 51 years, and I'm 72. And if there's ever a civil war in Virginia, I'll be willing to go back and fight for my state. That's how much I love that state.
Well, you wouldn't be going back and fighting just for that state, because if there's a civil war that breaks out in Virginia, it will not stay in Virginia. It will basically erupt coast to coast, because I think, judging by the email that I get and callers into the show, the American people are just about fed up with this erosion of their civil liberties and their rights by this criminal enterprise that dares call itself the legitimate government of this country.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. That's all I had to have. I just had to say it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, Sebastian. We're going to let you go here. And getting on back to the news here, apparently the Democrats allowed an impeached federal judge and Congressman Hastings to set the rules for the Trump impeachment. So who's better to set the rules for Trump's impeachment than a guy who's actually been impeached? And the Democrats, in all of their wisdom, appointed Alcee Hastings as the vice chair of the Rules Committee. They're all dirty, and they're projecting. They're trying to project onto Trump the crimes they themselves have committed. And basically, Trump hasn't committed any crimes other than a thought crime. They're trying to justify impeachment on the basis of what everybody is guessing Donald Trump was thinking when he was dealing with the corruption in Ukraine. He didn't actually do anything that's impeachable. And apparently last Friday, the Supreme Court pulled the rug out of that second article of impeachment, saying that Congress does not have a right to just subpoena everything the president is doing, because that's a fishing expedition. Subpoenas are supposed to be issued, specifically. Again, go back to your Fifth Amendment. You've got to say, we're concerned about this action or this possible crime, and we want the documents related to that. They can't just go on in there and say, give us every piece of paperwork you've got so that we can comb through them and look for an opportunity to prosecute. And the reality is that Donald Trump may be president. He's also a citizen of the United States of America, and the Fifth Amendment right to not self-incriminate applies to him as much as it does to anybody else. So anyway, what's going on over there? Apparently there's this Ukrainian oligarch paid $700,000 to the husband of Representative Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee that recently drafted 2 articles of impeachment against Trump. And in the 2 years leading up to Mucarsel-Powell's election in 2018, her husband, Robert Powell, made nearly $1 million working as a lawyer for Ukrainian oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, who's previously been accused of contract killings and embezzlement. So there is a huge corruption problem going on over there in Ukraine. There is an existing treaty that allows the Ukraine and the United States to cooperate dealing with such corruption. And so Trump was well within his authority to call up the president of Ukraine and say, we got to start dealing with this, because the United States has sent a huge amount of your money into Ukraine, and a lot of it has simply vanished. It never showed up where it was supposed to be used. It's disappeared, presumably, into certain pockets. Now, Rudy Giuliani has just come back from Ukraine. He has found a lot of information about corruption, and they're attacking him for the removal of the U.S. ambassador Yovanovitch, and Rudy is saying that she needed to be removed because, among many other things, one of the things she was doing was denying visas to Ukrainians who wanted to come to the U.S. and explain the democratic corruption in Ukraine. That's obstruction of justice. So once again, the Democrats are projecting. They're taking what they're doing and saying, "Oh, it's really Donald Trump." And by the way, you see this kind of projection in all sorts of places. When you have, for example, a husband and a wife, and one of them is cheating on the other, okay, one of the first things they'll do is they'll accuse the other spouse. "You're seeing somebody else, aren't you? Aren't you?" And I got to see this up close and personal because when my father was carrying on with an affair, the first thing he did was accuse my mother of having an affair. Put her on the defensive. Protect himself. All right, let's go back to the phones here. Stuart in Florida. Aloha, Stuart. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. What you just touched on about Virginia and the Declaration of Independence really hits on the point that answers, I think, the people who say, well, you got to vote for Trump because, what do you want to vote for a Democrat? The thing with Trump is the best way maybe to see voting for Trump is that it's a holding position. You're going to still lose ground, but you're going to lose it a little more slowly. The answer is really local. And you got to start talking to people in your area, not beat them over the head, throw out an idea, see how they react to it, and take it from there. I mean, as the crisis gets worse and the threats get worse, people, it's kind of like the fertilizer that will get people to start thinking about what's going on and what needs to be done. And that's really the solution. The solution is secession, okay, statewide and regionally, and the Declaration of Independence is our document, okay, to justify it all. Because this government doesn't represent us, and it sucks the blood from us, and they routinely violate the Constitution. The Congress is an enemy camp. It is bought and paid for. So that's another factor. So, study. I don't know. I mean, if you don't know a lot about military stuff, I mean, I think, and I know a little bit. But things like getting a copy of the Ranger Handbook might be a good thing to study, just to understand how to defend your area, and anything else that's related to that. And on the second point, as I mentioned to you in an email, someone brought up an important subject a week or two ago, and that is maybe a part of the show should be dedicated to the concept of preparedness. Whether it's food storage, whether it's guns, whatever, because to come full circle, the solution doesn't go through Washington. It's going to be local, and that's my basic point. So, thank you.
All right. Well, it's obvious at this point that the politicians in Washington, D.C., they just love the way things are right now. They're never going to change because the system works for them. They're getting rich. They're getting powerful. They've got hot and cold running interns to diddle all over the Capitol building. They have their own built-in pharmacy there, so they can get whatever the doctor prescribes them for, energetic or uppers or downers or whatever. It's a heck of a party over there in Washington, D.C., but it no longer represents the American people, and that's supposed to be their job. So, Stuart, thank you. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes,
Tom,
Michael,
good
day to you. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're on
Michael,
the air.
Okay, I just want to say Sebastian's a great call, very knowledgeable man. Very good call he had, Sebastian. Yeah, Michael, listen. Let's get to the real truth of the matter on all this. First off, I don't even know how to say it. The Jew coup has been started for 3 years when Trump was elected. The Jew coup with the liberal sheeple. These white Congress people are not even goyim. They're sheeple. They're sheeple being led by the Zog control. But Michael, with that being said, there's so much going on here with this impeachment nonsense. Your one caller, Mark, said that Virginia's changed. Well, Mark, let's get to the real truth. The reason Virginia's changed and it's going the way it is, the same thing in New York and New Jersey, is because of immigration. You got Hondurans up there by the hundreds of thousands, and all these Central Americans are moving into Virginia. Okay, you do have a lot of liberal lily whites that moved into Virginia that were actually from New Jersey and New York Democrats, and you also have a big Afro-American bunch of liberals moving into Virginia out of Washington because they don't want the crime. But that being said, let's look at Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz here in Florida. When I went to the Trump rally, she has her people out there, young girls holding signs saying F-U-C-K Donald Trump at 14, 15 years old. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz. You notice she's not nowhere to be seen in the Democratic Party. She's being controlled. She's a Zog agent, okay? Debbie Blabbermouth. She's the one that should be put in jail, not Trump. They should be indicting her and impeaching Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz. Now, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz is a big Ashkenazi, whatever you want to call it. But, getting back to this impeachment nonsense, Michael, did you see OAN today? Or did you see Laura Ingram's show yesterday about the license they're giving out to these people in New York and New Jersey? And they're standing in line by the hundreds. Oh, it looks like in the thousands, people, illegals getting driver's license.
Yes.
I was wondering how
it's even worse than that. The law they passed in New York to give illegals driver's licenses also prohibits the Department of Homeland Security from investigating any of these people to see if they've committed crimes. The illegal immigrants now have more privacy rights in this country than legal American citizens.
Well, Michael, a couple of your callers called in and say we're looking at civil war. We are looking at a civil war. There's no question about it. It's going to happen. There's no question about it. Listen, the same Zionists in this country are telling you not to have a gun, are telling everybody in Israel to walk around with Uzis. Okay, listeners? Every one of these Zionist agents like Schiff and all these schmucks here in the United States are telling you, we're going to take their guns. They're telling everybody in Israel to walk around with a gun because there's a billion Arabs around there ready to swallow them. Now, getting back to that, Michael, what's going on with what your callers call in sometimes your show, and Trump's doesn't do this and done that. Listen, at least now you're seeing really what's going on in the big sewer, the stinking lake, the sewer lake, like you said, the sewer. It's a big sewer. Now the chickens are going to come home to roost because we're going to see what's going to happen. Here in the state of Florida, we got a governor that said there's no such thing as a sanctuary. Until Donald Trump does that as a federal law and starts arresting these Democrats. I've been calling the White House telling him to start arresting these people. These Democrats need to be arrested. Nobody should be going into impeachment for these Blabbermouth Schultz, Pelosi, and all these people.
Okay, Tom, going to put you on hold.
Can I hang on, Mike?
Yeah, we're going to put you on hold. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Tom in Florida. And Tom, before we get back to you, I was just now looking at the Fox News feed, and they're talking about the protests that have been going on in France for like a year now, the yellow vests, and it's been exacerbated by Macron's attempt at pension reform, which is viewed by most of the French people as basically reneging on a promise made to young workers, and now that they're old workers, the deal that they all agreed to is being taken away. But Macron is hinting there may be some concessions and compromises. And they had this commentator on Fox News saying that, well, we need to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen here in the United States of America, where, the people rise up and force the government to change their policies. And so it's very clear to me that is exactly what the government is afraid of, is that the American people have reached their breaking point. And that's why we're seeing this push over in Virginia to sort of establish a precedent for the suppression of all Second Amendment rights.
Oh, yes, Michael, absolutely. And by the way, what's going on in France, there's places in Paris the police don't even want to go in. It's so bad. The police are afraid to go in some parts of Paris. Okay, we all know that. But yeah, Michael, getting back, did you see the El Salvadorian president today come out and say that He's not going to help Trump, even though Trump's pumping in billions of dollars into El Salvador. He can't help. He can't stop the illegal flow leaving out of his country to try to get the United States.
Yeah. Well, you know, what it is all of these countries, Mexico, Central America, and everything, they're seeing an opportunity to get rid of their, how shall I put this delicately, less desirable citizens, the unproductive citizens. And it's hardly the first time that's happened. When the embargo against Cuba was temporarily lifted and Cuban immigration was allowed, Castro went down to the Cuban prisons and he took all those prisoners and he put them on boats and said 90 miles that way. And ever since then, of course, Florida has been in the grip of these Cuban criminal gangs. And it's an absolute disaster. And so all of these countries are saying, here's a chance for us to clean our own country out and dump the garbage on the Norteamericanos.
Well, Michael, I know all about the Mariolito boat lift. I can tell you everything that's going on here. If you ever want to ask a question, I can answer your question anytime you want. I can also mention this to you. Yes, this is Dade and Broward County, as I told your show many times, and every one of your listeners need to understand this. It used to be almost 78% Anglo. It's down to 10% right now. Okay, this is the model for the rest of the country, ladies and gentlemen. This is what they're going to do. Fill it up like a bottle and watch it explode. Now, I want to get back, and here's what's going to go on also, Michael, to Sebastian. He's a great caller. Let Sebastian know. I went and spent $100 on stickers, and I buy a lot of stickers from Liberty Stickers. There's one sticker that everybody should buy, and everybody should send flyers, whatever you can, to Virginia. It's called John Adams. It has a picture of John Adams, and it says this: with the gun, you're a citizen. Without the gun, you're a subject. That they should be flooding the airways and every show in Virginia should be flooding that state with millions of flyers. With the gun, you're a citizen. Without the gun, you're a subject, and you are being controlled by Zog. That's exactly what's going on here. Now, getting back to what I want to say also is
okay, Tom, I'm going to hold you over. We got to do station identification, and then you need to kind of wrap up because we have another caller waiting on the line who's been waiting very patiently. So we'll be back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking with Tom in Florida, who was wrapping up basically his comments about how open borders and uncontrolled immigration have pretty much wrecked Florida.
Yeah, Michael, that's correct. The only ones that actually vote Republican in the state are the Cubans. The Haitians and the Puerto Ricans are all liberal Democrats. But yeah, Michael, I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. Here's what I want to wrap up. Yeah, don't everybody take it easy. Everybody should be at ease. Donald Trump's gonna get 5 more years in the White House. He's gonna have a big rally tonight. There's supposed to be 30,000 people in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he's gonna expose the Bolsheviks for what they are. He's gonna put a dagger in that demon rat party. So I just say take it easy. Everything's gonna be calm, cool. We're gonna get 5 more years with Trump, and then he's gonna expose the Bolsheviks for what they really are. He's gonna crush that demon rat party, and we're gonna stop this invasion of our country. And I want to see. We need to put the pressure on the White House to get all these illegals out. They broke the law. Pelosi and all them are going to be impeached next. They're going up for a prison sentences because they broke federal law. They're worse than the biggest swamp there is. They're worse than the Everglades. Okay, but the Everglades is clean compared to what these sewer rats. But listen, Michael, I just got to tell you this. Florida is a great state now because we got a great governor. We elected the right officials, the leaders. We got Gates. We got great leaders in this state. We're not a sanctuary state. He's a matter of fact, we're kicking them out. They're not going to get the free education. All these illegals think they can get in California. We're not going to, the people in this, the crackers here ain't going to put up with it. We're not going to tolerate it. All my friends I talk to, none of us are tolerating all over the state of Florida. And I have a lot of friends all over the state, believe me, in Georgia, and I got a lot of friends in Alabama. A lot of all my friends were fed up with this nonsense these demon rats have been trying to push down our throat for the last 70 years. We're not going to tolerate. We're fed up, and people are coming to their wits with this nonsense, with these controlled sheeple. I call them sheeple. They're a bunch of sheep, and they go, bah, okay, yes, master, to the Zog, and it's going to stop. It's going to stop, and it's stopping immediately. Because, after this impeachment crap's over, the Senate's going to throw it out, Trump's going to get 5 years, and, like what's going on in Brexit. I can't wait till the EU crumbles, Michael. That's the main thing I got to say. I can't wait till that day on your show that you tell me that France, Italy, Austria, England's for sure going. When they all crumble, that whole that Stasi Merkel gets crushed, and I hope. And Germany's really going to get crushed this time. Okay, they're going to get crushed with their nonsense they've been promoting in Europe. Disgraceful what they've done to Europe. Just absolutely disgraceful. But they're not going to be able to do that crap over here, Michael, because people are not that stupid. Like I said, with the gun, you're a citizen. Without the gun, you're a subject. And the people here are not going to tolerate what happened to Cuba, what's happened to Venezuela, Nicaragua. These people, the people in this country are not going to tolerate it. Let me tell you that right now. We're not going to tolerate it. The ex-military people are not going to tolerate this nonsense with these Kabbalah reading schmucks that are trying to destroy this country. It won't happen. I guarantee it. Never happen. No way. And we know what? These states like New York and New Jersey, I hope they give all these illegals licenses that they want and take all these people out of California and Texas, like I've been telling you, Michael, and shove them right in those states. If Trump really was a man right now, after this impeachment tomorrow, he'd say every illegal in California, every illegal in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, you're all going to the New England states with Bernie, Pocahontas, and that imbecile Blumenthal, that moron who's the biggest filthy liar, said he went to Vietnam. I tell you what, I got two brothers so upset with that guy, you have no idea, Michael. You have no idea with that Blumenthal, that filthy liar. And like I said, how does this guy get elected as a senator in that state is beyond me. A state's supposed to be 90% white Christian. Yeah, right. Give me a break. What brainwashing is going on in this country is absurd. It's absolutely absurd, Michael. So that's all I got to say. And you know what? I just think I'm going to relax. I know Trump's going to be in the White House for another 5 years, and he's going to get a lot more done with the wall and the taxes and everything. We'll see what he does. He's going to crush the Democrats in the next election. You watch what I tell you. He'll crush them like a sour grape that they are. Michael, thank you for taking my call. God bless you. You're a great American. That's all I can say. You have the best show on.
Well, thanks an awful lot. Have a Merry Christmas. We're going to let you go here. And I certainly hope that you're right. But time will solve that mystery. The positive aspect of Trump in his second term is he's not going to be out to please anybody because he can't run for a third term. And maybe they'll dangle the possibility of a third term in front of him to try and maintain control. My big concern right now is that if the Senate does not remove Trump, and I don't think they should, because this whole impeachment thing is a scam from the beginning, but there will be an attempt on Trump's life. And by the way, Fox News was just showing a video of the people waiting for this rally tonight, and it is a huge, huge crowd. They're not going to be able to fit in. And the pollsters are saying Trump's poll numbers have been driven upward by this impeachment scam because the American people, by and large, we have a sense of fair play and we can see what the Democrats are doing. And the freshman Democrats, they're being told this is going to cost you next year. You're going to be back on the unemployment line at a time when jobs are hard to come by. So Pelosi is obviously out there reassuring all these Democratic freshmen in the House of Representatives, don't worry, we've got you covered, we got you protected, we're going to rig the elections so that you hang on to your job. We'll make sure you have enough money where you can hang on to your job. And again, that's not the way this is supposed to work. Okay, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to go to Joe in Tennessee. Joe, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, Trump 2024. I mean, start making the T-shirts now, and people might get upset by it, but they've stolen 3 years, almost 4 years of his presidency with all these phony investigations, so it's justifiable. He should get another term for what they've done to him. But that'll really make a lefty's head explode if you go around wearing a T-shirt that said Trump 2024, because I'd vote for him in 2024 again. And I think what Trump is doing is what great leaders do, which is he's bringing the public, the people with him. I hear a lot of callers call here, and they're all like, oh, Trump's got to do that, Trump's got to do that, and he's not going this, he didn't do that yet. And part of the thing he's got to do as a good leader is bring the people up to speed with him. And there hasn't been a president I've ever seen that has educated the people and exposed the corruption in this country like Donald Trump has. So that's what he's doing, and it's a great leadership ability of his that he's been able to do that. Now, what you're seeing now is the genius of Trump is that you'll know his genius when he wins re-election and he wins a Republican Congress. To me, when that happens, nobody can ever dispute the fact that you're seeing one of the greatest political minds in the generation. And that's going to be it. That's what he's playing for. I see what he's doing now, and it's brilliant. He's going to take the House, and he's going to win the presidency, and he's going to have a mandate, and his supporters are going to be pissed off, and he's going to not have to take anything from anybody. After this impeachment, you know what he should say tonight? And believe me, the ratings for him tonight are going to be astronomical at his rally. He should say, hey, Democrats, is that all you got? You know, you got to be careful when you take a swing at somebody, you know. You better, when you cold cock somebody in a bar, you better put him down. When you hit somebody in the face with the best you got and he just kind of grins, you know you're in big trouble. And Trump, his attitude about this whole impeachment, it doesn't really faze him. I mean, I see his supporters going ape shit, excuse my French, and people getting all wound up. You see Trump, he's cool as a cucumber. It's almost like he's laughing about all this stuff. So I think you're witnessing one of the most incredible political geniuses that we've ever seen. And I'm glad people are going to call up and say, Joe, you're a bootlicker and all this about pro-Trump. You know, Trump's made some mistakes, but I mean, look at the amount of attacks that he's been under, you know, from the corrupt. Look at now. I mean, who would ever thought the FBI, people seriously talking about the FBI and the Fisa court all being shut down? They're so corrupt. That's all because of Trump. So, I mean, you know, I hear people talking, oh, he didn't do enough for immigration and he didn't do enough. Well, for crying out loud, you got to look at the amount of stuff that this guy has done, you know, and at least give him credit. I mean, these are huge victories and huge, like, things that he's been up against. You know, very formidable obstacles have been in this man's way, yet he's overcoming them. And I just can't believe.
Well, I'll tell you what I think Trump
nitpickers.
needs to do. If Trump survives the Senate trial, okay, there's a good chance he's going to be reelected to a second term, because unless Tulsi Gabbard is the Democratic nominee, there really is nobody to vote for except Trump. And I'm certainly not going to vote for Hillary Clinton when she tries to step in, especially with that really horrible plastic surgery she's just gone through to try and make herself look like she's younger than she really is. But again, I wish Trump would put on those presidential brass knuckles and start going after all these governors and mayors who are declaring sanctuary counties for illegal immigrants, because they are all in violation of existing U.S. law under Title VIII. And they should all be in handcuffs and headed for jail. And if Attorney General Barr isn't going to do that, then it's time to replace Attorney General Barr with somebody who is outside the system. Again, that's Trump's biggest mistake. Coming on into the Oval Office, he wanted to be magnanimous in victory. He kept all these Obama holdovers with this very naive assumption that since he was now the boss, they would be loyal to him. And that may be the way it works in the world of business. It is certainly not the way it works in politics. Everybody inside Washington, D.C., they've got their secret allegiances. They've got their controllers. They've got their agendas. And Trump really should have just scraped out the entire government the way his predecessors did, you know, like both Bush and Obama, you know, and where they like fired all the U.S. attorneys or something,
Mike,
and bring in all these new people. And Trump should bring in people who are from outside the Beltway, who are not compromised by their connections with the system, who don't have these long histories and track records of being involved in some of the most corrupt events of recent American history. And that, I think, was his biggest single strategic mistake coming into the presidency. And I'm not just saying that because
Mike, I disagree with you.
Head of NASA.
I think that I disagree with you in that I think that by exposing these deep state malls, he's showing the people. I mean, first of all, he's surviving. He hasn't. This impeachment isn't going to go anywhere. And second of all, you're right. I mean, Barr is either shit or get off the pot for Barr time. But meanwhile, the like unred-pilled people are being very much red-pilled and educated into the deep state. You know, we talk like, because all your callers and you and us people on the alternate right, we're very aware of the deep state. We're very aware of the corruption in the FBI. We were before Trump was even elected. But you're getting mom and pop middle America to be aware of the deep state. They're getting aware of the rhinos. They're aware. They were like, these are people that 10 years ago were USA chanting Bush bombers, you know? They didn't believe in a deep state. And
hey, Joe, I want to make a point here because you just touched on something. You're saying Trump is making the American people aware of all this corruption and stuff that's going on. Trump may be out there with his Twitter account making some points, but in the end, it is the independent media. It's Republic Broadcasting. It's whatreallyhappened.com. It's all of us working together. We're the ones educating the American people and saying, hey, this country is not what you think it is. This government is not what you think it is, and we are in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah, but Mike, as a protester and an activist, a guy that stood on street corners with signs and giving out DVDs, I always was waiting for somebody that could propel information into the mainstream of America, and that's what Trump is doing. I mean, like I said, that it was always a Don Quixote-esque task, to try to get the FBI exposed to the American people. Now, we've done a good job softening up the target, but Trump's as president with his megaphone and by exposing them by their own deeds, it's like they're exposing themselves. Trump just sits back and points at it. They're like in some kind of derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome, that makes them smokes them out. They come out into the open. And it's amazing, Brennan and Comey, and now, like you said, I personally think Durham and Huber, you haven't heard much about Huber in a while. I think that's going to happen pretty soon. And then, boy, oh boy, I'm hoping with this impeachment, it makes Trump take the gloves totally off. And I hope he does things like you were talking about and a lot of your callers want to see, which I want to see too. But I realize that first you got to defang his enemies and declaw them before you can achieve a lot of these goals, And so if he wins re-election with a Republican Congress and he's for real, and it's still a bit of a chance that he isn't, he's just some showman, But if he's for real, then boy, he could do some really wonderful things. You won't recognize America in 4 years from then, as far as the left.
Well, I don't recognize America right now here, but again, I don't think you're giving the independent media the credit that we are due. Because, I've been at this for a very, very long time. I've been doing this for like a quarter of a century. And, if we weren't having an impact, you wouldn't have Facebook and Google and Twitter, trying to impose themselves as filters on what goes through their servers to try and say, oh, no, everything's fine here. Illegal immigrants are great. Vaccines are safe and so forth. Obviously, we're having an impact because they are afraid of us and they're trying to basically find ways to shut us down. And that tells me we've had much more of an impact than anybody wants to admit.
Well, I hope I didn't give the impression that I don't think we've had a big, Donald Trump would never be president without us. And like you said, I'm banned on Facebook. I've gone through it, like I'm sure a lot of people out there have. And just the fact that we're being censored and suppressed is enough of an indication of our success. But so I don't want to give that impression. I just want to say, at the same time, I'm just so happy that we could have a guy like Trump. And the number one thing I've always said about him that I think is the best part of him is the way he's exposing these others, the deep state. And we're okay. We can talk about immigration. We can talk about, but my number one, thankfulness for Trump is the way everybody seems to have been exposed as far as the corrupt cabal, deep state, rhinos, neocons that have been running this country have just come. They've been smoked out. And hopefully they'll be rounded up and put on trial and punished. That's what I want to see. They call me for money. I told them until I start seeing indictments, I'm not giving a dime. What about Epstein? You had all the tools are there to destroy the deep state. Let's see it. Let's do it.
I agree.
Time. So I'm definitely watching Trump today in Battle Creek. Now, I lived in Virginia for 10 years. I lived in Norfolk. And it's just like Tom was saying and the other caller before him, it's the northern Virginia counties from all the Washington people, the lefties there that destroyed the cities of Washington and stuff. And then they move out to northern Virginia, and then they got this crazy governor And but it'll never happen. I don't believe there's going to be a civil war in Virginia because they would lose. The Virginia people, it's kind of like America in a way, and that it's just blue in a couple of areas, Richmond and Northern Virginia, and that's it. And so there's not going to be. It's not going to be a civil war there. The whole gun thing is always look what happened to Beto when he started talking about grabbing people's guns. He disappeared. You know,
Yes.
He was gone in a month. And I don't know. I think that this governor, and Bloomberg, the mayor, put a lot of money into Virginia and Pennsylvania, and his money always comes with the gun control attachments to it. And I think it's just talk, and it'll die down real quick. So I don't think that's going to start a civil war. I think that it's alarmism, but I hope not.
I'm hoping to avoid the civil war, but I don't think the gun grabber talk is going to go away because it's become one of the foundations of the liberal agenda, is to disarm us all so we're easier to control.
Well, I hope they keep talking about it, because the more they talk about it, the more they rally the right, and that's a good thing. So if they're stupid. Once again, the Democrats are pretty stupid, and they smoke their own dope. They don't realize that. I think one person said it once. I think Joy Behar said it, and she was right. She says, "Don't say anything. Just when you get the chance, outlaw them." And that's the smart. She's actually smart, because when you want people, it's politically unpopular gun control. It's only popular amongst lefty loons. So, I just think that this is like ridiculous. It's actually, if anything, it's going to cause the Virginia House and Senate to go back to Republicans the next election.
I would like to see that. I definitely would.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Joe, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And again, we're seeing the video feed from Battle Creek, Michigan, and that venue is packed, which is all the more impressive because when you realize it's like 15 degrees Fahrenheit there right now. And people are getting out there in that extremely cold weather to get on out there and see President Trump. And I think it's definitely a measure of his popularity. I remember back in 2016, when Trump was just packing in these sports arenas and Hillary couldn't even fill a bicycle shop. And I think that was mostly because Hillary was counting on fraud and the illegal immigrant vote to basically take her over the line. And it didn't work, which means she's going to be trying twice as hard next year. Somebody actually made a joke. She's had a cheek job. And somebody said it looked like that she transplanted a baby's butt onto her cheeks to try and smooth them out. And it's actually not a very attractive looking plastic surgery. And the problem with all plastic surgery is over time, it starts to fall apart. We all know older people who had plastic surgery in their middle-aged years, and it doesn't really stick. Okay, phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we have a caller on the line. Chance in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Michael. I agree with you. The alternative media, for lack of a better word, has been exposing the deep state for the longest time. I've been subscribing to alternative newspapers and listening to alternative talk for 30 years.
Yes.
So they've exposed it themselves. I don't give the credit to Trump because he just happened to be in office when this became glaringly obvious to everybody. And if it wasn't him, it would have been another president who they didn't like. So I can't understand that argument that Trump solid-handedly exposed the deep state. People who are in the know, such as yourself and many alternative hosts and alternative book writers and newspaper publishers, they informed us of this, me personally, for 30 years now. So, he just, like I said, he just happened to be in office and when this occurred. And what surprises me is what took people so long to figure this out.
Well,
do they need Trump?
Be fair here. Let's be fair here. It is the fact that Trump is in office that has goaded the deep state into overstepping its bounds. And, you know, the fastest way to bring down a dictatorship, which is what we're dealing with here, is to force them to act like one where everybody can see it. So Trump gets the credit for sort of goading the deep state into making some very obvious moves. But as far as making the public aware that there is a deep state, that the FBI is lying about things, that the independent media gets its share of the credit. I've been doing this for 25 years, going all the way back to 1994 and the murder of White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster, which is when I had my run-in with the FBI. And began to realize they're not about law enforcement at all. They're basically a modern American Gestapo, there to enforce the will of whoever happens to be in power.
Yeah, I can agree with you there 100%. They were forced to show the rest of the masses their hand, possibly. Yeah, I can understand that, but I've known this for the last 30 years at least, and I'm sure you have too, being in the alternative. So that's one thing that kind of perplexes me about people. They say he's responsible for outing the deep state. Like I said, you were right. Maybe he forced them to show their hand a little bit to those who didn't know, but to those of us in the know, we didn't actually need him to prove to us that the deep state exists. I'm sure you would agree with that, correct?
I would agree with that, yes, 100%.
Okay, Michael, thank you for letting me have my piece. Good night now.
All right, good night and Merry Christmas, and we're going to let you go here. Okay, getting on back to the impeachment news, and I'm watching the news feed, waiting for there to be some word that there's actually going to be a vote on impeachment tonight. They keep saying it's going to happen, but apparently over in the House of Representatives, they're still debating the impeachment. They're debating the rules under which they're going to conduct their vote. They may be dealing with the fact that the Supreme Court basically pulled the rug out of the second article of impeachment, and that puts them in a very awkward position because we may actually see a majority of the House vote no on that second article because they realize they're raising on a busted flush. And it's been made very, very clear to many of these Democratic House freshmen that their constituents are not in favor of this. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And presumably tonight's House vote is going to send these two articles of impeachment, or at least one of them, over to the Senate. And what the Democrats are trying to do now is hijack the Senate to allow them a chance to replay the House investigation. And so Chuck Schumer is out there demanding that Mitch McConnell allow testimony by 4 White House witnesses. And Mitch McConnell is saying, no, we're just here to look at the available evidence, to look at the case that the House of Representatives has put together and come to a determination. You had your chance to make your case. It's not a very strong case, and we're just going to go on that. So Chuck Schumer is already out there whining and crying, it's not fair. It's not fair that you want to do this, according to the Constitution. That doesn't work for us. You've got to change the rules so we can win here. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I had a little bit of trouble with a transaction I made for you. I'm going to clear that up when I get off the phone. But getting back to the Trump impeachment nonsense that's going on, I was listening to what Tom was saying and about this Bolshevik takeover of the United States. It makes a lot of sense. I've been reading a lot about that. You got the UN behind a lot of this stuff with the global warming, and Trump pulled out of the Paris the Paris nonsense. What do you call that? Redistribution of wealth, scam. So what I'm thinking is something that I've heard a long time ago was a one world government, a private central bank for all of the citizens in the world, and they're going to use carbon credits as the new currency. Because they all seem to be jumping on this carbon credit thing. What's your take on that?
Well, the carbon credit scam is just another way to extract money from ordinary people. And they've run into a bit of a pothole on that one because they had this conference on global warming going, and they couldn't come to an agreement over just how much money the developed nations had to give to the undeveloped nations to atone for having warmed the planet.
Exactly.
And you know, it's just another way of grabbing money from the population and convincing them that the government knows how they should run their lives better than they do.
Yeah. Very early this morning, I think we're almost in the same time zone, there was a website saying that Australia yesterday was the hottest year on record. And you know, of course, I immediately looked at it, and one of the first things I came across was in 1909.
Yes.
It was hotter, and an actual lady scientist had taken a picture of it, and then she showed that data was actually missing.
The Australians
version.
deleted. They've deleted those earlier years that were actually warmer.
Yes. And there was a heat wave apparently in Australia in like around 1886, and that's gone too. So they're only going by 1910 until present. So it's just another country that has fallen for the scam.
Yes.
And they actually, you know what, Mike? It's like it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. People that want to know the truth can actually dig this stuff up. But so many people are so lazy and complacent that they don't even care. They'll hear, you know, the talking points, the lies, and they'll believe it without even questioning. And
well, not as much as they used to. Not as much as they used to. I mean, the percentage of the population that blindly accepts what the media and government tells them is rapidly shrinking. That's why they've hit the panic button relative to the independent media, is they're losing this battle for control of what people think.
Yep. You guys that put your necks out for this sort of thing, you're heroes. You're absolute heroes, because I have no idea of any mainstream media or any sort of media that's out there, in the mainstream, that can be trusted. I know of not one.
Yep. And there's nothing new there. We go back and we look at how the Hearst newspapers helped sell the Spanish-American War to the American people. It's been going on for a very, very long time. And, you know, when this country first started up, there were laws that limited how much media any one entity could own in order to preserve a diversity of opinion. But especially going back to Operation Desert Storm, the government rescinded all those laws, and that was the deal they made. Cover the Iraq War the way we want it covered, and we'll let you just gobble up all the small media and build these huge media empires to the point where today there's about, you know, six boards of directors that control pretty much everything that is shown on TV or in the newspapers. And of course, the members of those boards of directors also have financial interests in the military-industrial complex, the oil, and so forth.
If not owned by those other corporations and companies. And then there's David Rockefeller actually thanking Time, the New York Times, and other publications for not exposing the fact that they are trying to push a one-world government.
Yes.
There's also that. All right. Thank you very much for your time, Mike. I'm going to be listening in. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to let you go here. And interestingly enough, Fox News was just running this story about how socialism is now more and more approved of by the American people. So they're already out there trying to sell the transformation of this country into a socialist society. Well, talk to anybody who used to live in the former Soviet Union about whether socialism worked for them. So anyway, getting on back to our impeachment, still waiting to see when there's going to be a vote here. And apparently, Florida Democrat Stephanie Murphy invoked escaping communist Vietnam as her reason to fully embrace the impeachment of Donald Trump. Now, that is a bit of a stretch. But at this point, all of these Democrats are trying to justify voting for impeachment. They know that the American people know that Trump has not actually committed a high crime or misdemeanor, and he doesn't deserve to be impeached. They know that their constituents are very, very angry over this impeachment. And so they're just coming up with any kind of nonsensical excuse to say, no, 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 I'm justified in voting to impeach because of communist Vietnam and the phase of the moon and, you know, Bigfoot is an endangered species now and whatever else they can come up with here. But the reality is the Democrats, by trying to impeach Donald Trump, they're destroying our political system. And as a side effect, they are really damaging their chances of winning in 2020 because we're hearing from a lot of people that they simply are not going to vote these Democrats back into the House of Representatives for this. In fact, only 36% of voters believe the freshman Dems deserve re-election if they vote for impeachment. This from pollster McLaughlin. So Nancy Pelosi's got a real tough job out there saying, no, 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 no. By the time 2020 elections roll around, everybody will have forgotten about the impeachment debacle. No, they won't, because we here in the independent media are going to remind people of how the Democrats, starting as soon as Trump won in 2016, were just out to get him. And the only crime he's really committed was defeating Hillary Clinton. The Democrats just can't deal with that kind of effrontery. All righty. Apparently, a group of Trump supporters showed up at Michigan Democratic Representative Elisa Slotkin's town hall to protest her decision to vote in favor of impeachment. She was having this little town hall where she could get on out there and, you know, make her case for re-election. And, you know, as of last weekend, she said she hadn't made up her mind. Then on Monday, she said, yes, she's going to vote for impeachment. And that prompted this disruption of her town hall. So it didn't go quite the way she wanted it to. And it's happening all over the country in all of these districts that went to Trump in 2016, but somehow wound up with a Democratic representative in these districts. Apparently, Democratic Representative Abigail Spanberger held a town hall last Sunday that was a real doozy, and people are furious, and somebody shot a video from the town hall that showed people yelling, "President Trump is innocent." So this is happening all over. Apparently, last Saturday, there was a town hall event featuring Adam Schiff, and the audience was shouting liar and treason, and at one point there was a physical altercation over what appears to be a Trump 2020 banner. So, meanwhile, on the other side, there have been all these demonstrations to impeach Donald Trump that are clearly AstroTurf. They've got all these matching professionally printed signs, and you know they're out there, and apparently, at this LA protest, they were carrying Trump's head on a pike, and Alyssa Milano and throughput Katie Hill headlined the event. And Katie Hill was saying, you know what's great? Everything's a blessing and a curse. Tonight I can be here. I'm not a member of Congress, and this is a solemn, solemn thing. But I can say tonight, it's time to impeach the insert obscenity of your choice here. Now, CNN has egg on their face because their own poll is showing impeachment support collapsing among Democratic voters. CNN's trying to spin that away and explain it away and saying, well, obviously there's a problem. Yeah, there's a problem. And the Democrats, created it for themselves. All right, we're going to take another phone call. W in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Sort of off topic from what's happening today, although I think the whole situation is pretty much a farce. I mean, we've known the last 3 years all the different elements that's just basically just comedy. But I wanted to just talk about something. You're from Hawaii. I mean, you spent some time in Hawaii, and I just saw this article today, and I would ask that you maybe put it on your website. It's from theatlantic.com. It's called History's Largest Mining Operations About to Begin, and it's all about seabed mining. All these companies are about to move from land mining, not completely, but there is an agency under the UN. It's based in Jamaica, and this whole idea is called the International Seabed Authority. And this whole thing is to give permits to companies to mine in international waters. Now, I guess off of a couple miles off of countries' coastline, I guess that's their own territorial waters, but this International Seabed Authority is all out allowing corporations to literally scrape the bottom of oceans to get different mining elements and material, copper, cobalt, whatever. And so I guess my whole point was, reading this article was basically saying there's no type of real environmental regulations on this. It's just going to scrape the bottom. You don't know what you're pulling up. You don't know what you might be missing out on, similar to what's happening in the Amazon. You don't know what type of value you're losing just scraping up the bottom of the seabed. And it made some valid points about, okay, well, we're obviously, we have to mine for progress, and I get that. That makes sense. But at the same time, I mean, this is just all out this destruction of the bottom of the ocean. And it's a real good article, and I hope you take a look at it and just see what it's all about. It's kind of wild.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting because this idea of seabed mining was actually the cover story for Howard Hughes' Glomar Explorer, which was actually built to recover this sunken Russian submarine. But the cover story was that Howard Hughes was investing a significant part of his fortune to hunt for manganese nodules on the floor of the ocean. And it was certainly far more expensive to do that than to mine manganese here on the land. But again, it was just a cover story. The big problem is, besides the damage to the ocean life cycle, because I don't know where they're planning on doing the scraping, but I presume it's just going to be anywhere they think there's something of value. They could start ripping into these huge deposits of methane hydrate, which we know are there in the sea floor. And boy, you want to talk about a greenhouse gas? I mean, carbon dioxide, first of all, NASA has finally admitted it's not really a greenhouse gas, but methane certainly is. And there is a huge amount of methane down there on the ocean floor, which if the seafloor mining rips into it, it is going to bob up to the surface of the ocean. It's going to melt. It's going to release all this methane into the atmosphere. And there really will be a global warming crisis. Not to mention the fire hazard. I mean, you can take a piece of methane hydrate and it looks like, sherbet. It looks like a dessert. But you can set fire to it with a cigarette lighter.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. Yeah, and at the very top of this article, it shows a map of, I guess, where some parts of between Hawaii and Mexico where they're going to permit mining, and the length of this area where they're going to permit it is longer than the U.S. You can see the U.S. at the top, and the length of the permitted area that they're going to be able to mine in just this section is longer than the length of the continental U.S. So, yeah, check out that article, Atlantic.com. That was it.
All right, I'll definitely check that out. And again, it strikes me as, a very reckless approach to satisfying corporate greed. And we know they want to mine all this stuff. They're looking for the rare earth elements. But again, we've seen the damage that open pit and strip mining has done on the land. Doing it in the ocean,
on land,
the damage is going to be just it's going to be just as bad. Anyway, listen, W, we need to let you go. We need to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors, so stay tuned. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to Kelly in Austin. Aloha, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, well, I was listening to your comments about ocean mining, and what really caught my attention there were your comments about the methane hydrates. We know that one of the major, the biggest extinction in the last 542 million years was the extinction that occurred at the end of the Permian period, into the Paleozoic era and into the Permian period. It was called the Great Dying. In fact, about 95% of marine species died out at the end of the Permian, and 70% or so of land-based species did. There are various things that accounted for that, such as massive volcanic eruptions on the Siberian traps. But I think that the thing that really drove that was the overturning of the ocean column and the release of the methane from the methane hydrates as they dissolved. That caused oxygen levels in the atmosphere to drop from about 30 mole percent to about 16 mole percent. And of course, you can see how that would have stressed land-based organisms and then even the marine organisms as well. And if you look at where we are now, we are at about 21 mole percent oxygen in the atmosphere. And life on Earth is perfectly adapted to that level now. If the methane hydrates go into solution and you see massive amounts of methane released into the atmosphere, imagine the damage that would cause to human civilization. That in itself might be enough to wipe us out. That's the one thing that really does bother me about global warming, natural global warming. I think what you're seeing today is entirely natural, but that's the one thing I think that can really wreck life on Earth as we know it. And so we better be careful about how you mess around with these methane hydrates, because those are the one thing that's the real dangerous greenhouse gas. CO2 is nothing, period. But methane is really it could be a real killer.
You know, a few years back, there was actually a proposal to try and mine the methane hydrates as a source of energy, because methane is natural gas, and but at the time it was determined there was no way to safely drill down and extract chunks of methane hydrate without risking the collapse of the overburden and the exposure of these huge chunks of methane hydrate, which would then float to the surface of the ocean and start outgassing.
Well, yeah, I recall hearing discussions about that, and I was never convinced that methane hydrates could be economically or really safely exploited. We better hope that they remain buried and stay safely from away from us, because they can. That would really, I think, be something that would wreck civilization.
Yes.
Anyway, I hadn't thought about that in a long time, and your comment about that suddenly clicked, because I realized I had these conversations before with other geologists, and it's something I think we really need to be very wary of.
I absolutely agree with you. Kelly, we're going to have to let you go. We got to do station identification. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we get back to our domestic news, as you know, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker opened today. And we shouldn't be surprised, because the sneak previews weren't doing very well. But the reviews are saying this is the worst Star Wars movie ever. And it's a finale that doesn't really seem to serve any purpose. And it's reminiscent, of course, when we were working on Lost, where they had this convoluted storyline and they tried to wrap it all up in the last season. And in the series finale, they just said, well, everybody's actually been dead this whole time. And the fan base, of course, had the palm to forehead moment and saying, you're kidding me, which is why Lost has never gone into syndication. And it's a shame, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You know, I love all those movies. I have most of them on DVD. But it's disappointing where they couldn't sort of bring this to a meaningful climax. And when it comes out on pay-per-view, I am going to watch it. Because I am a hardcore Star Wars fanatic, but it's very disappointing. And what we're hearing from the studio that produced it is, well, you know, young audiences, they don't listen to reviewers anyway. So I'm expecting they're going to do what's called a fast burn on this film, which is where they're going to flood it into as many theaters as they can and get as many people to look at it before word of mouth gets on out and basically kills the film. It may be a good hot start, but at this point it looks like it's not going to have the longevity of the earlier Star Wars pictures here. And I noticed that TNT was running all of the Star Wars previous films except for The Last Jedi. Apparently that one is too close to its release. They couldn't get that included in the deal. And you know, it's a shame to see the franchise stumble and fall like that. And I think, you know, Lucas probably should have been a little bit more involved in this final film of the franchise that he personally started, rather than let JJ take it solo, as it were. All right, getting on back to the important news, the real news, if you will. Apparently, House Judiciary Chairman Gerald Nadler has left Washington, D.C. and flown to New York to tend to an undisclosed family emergency. So Nadler is not going to be there on this last procedural step before the Democrats bring the 2 articles of impeachment to the House floor tonight. And we're still waiting to hear if they're actually going to get to that vote before the end of our show today. Now, as you're probably already aware, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, their texts to each other made the case there was a political bias at work, despite what Horowitz said. Now, Horowitz was having to testify before Congress and basically said that there may have been bias, but they couldn't prove it. Personally, I think the Lisa Page, Peter Strzok texts did prove that there was bias. And Lisa Page is now out there trying to play the victim and saying that the Department of Justice betrayed her and Peter Strzok by releasing their text messages. And no, when you are working for the government and you're using government hardware, every communication is public property. And there are a lot of laws governing how information is to be handled by people who are in government. That's how Hillary Clinton got into trouble doing government business on a private email server. And apparently that is going to court tomorrow to try and force her to testify under oath and explain what were those 30,000 email messages that she deleted. Okay, now, interestingly enough, the FBI went to the Fisa court for a warrant on Carter Page more than once, and their first attempt at it was the 1 in 10,000 denied by the court. That's how bad it was. And for some reason, the Department of Justice Inspector General Horowitz left this little detail out of his report. Now, of course, we have the Fisa court itself saying that you know, they were lied to, that they're rebuking the FBI for all the false information, and now they're saying they're going to go back and re-examine all the warrants the FBI has ever asked for. Because they're now saying that the information contained in these other applications by the FBI simply cannot be presumed to be reliable. And that's good. Nobody likes a liar here. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Fred in Wisconsin, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I had got a chance to see the new Clint Eastwood movie yesterday with my old lady in Madison, Wisconsin, which is the hellhole of the Midwest. But I got to say this, it was a great movie. He really stuck his neck out. Everybody here, the press around here are panning it. They're saying it's garbage. But it really brought it home about what the FBI was doing back in those days. And yes, it was a fabulous, fabulous movie. I'm so happy the man took the time to make it. The cast was perfect. Everybody was perfect. I cried thinking of how bad it really is. I just wanted to comment on that because I know you got a wide audience, and I hope these people take the time to see that movie.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm going to see it because I understand that Richard Jewell was basically framed for the bombing, and you need to understand the timeline that we're talking about because that Olympic Park bombing took place just a few days after the accidental shootdown of TWA 800, and the government needed some kind of a distraction for the media to focus on. And so they had the bombing at the Olympic Park, and they said, oh, well, we can forget all about all those witnesses who saw a missile take down TWA 800. And they decided to just pick on Richard Jewell as the patsy and say, oh, he did it, and try and make it into a big sting. And so I'm glad that Jewell has been vindicated by this because I don't think he had anything to do with the bombing. And I'm glad that Clint Eastwood made the movie, although obviously he has left out the larger context of that whole event.
I was not aware of that other business. I'm just saying from this movie standing on its own, it has a lot of merit. And he stuck his neck out because the people that are running the show don't like to be told, you know, this type of stuff. And like I said, it happened back in the 70s. And you talk about Comey and you talk about all these bad actors, and you know, they were alive and well back then.
Well, you know, Clint Eastwood has never been one to yield to public pressure around him. He's very much his own man. And I'll tell you from personal experience, you do not want to tick him off.
Well, like I said, my only purpose is to let people know how great a movie it is, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, you've got it. We're going to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay, as you're probably already aware, last Sunday, Fox News host Chris Wallace did an interview with former FBI Director Jim Comey, who basically came on out and said there was no malice, there was no bias, we were just a bunch of incompetent boobs, which in my mind, is a reason for all these higher level FBI people to be fired. Forget about politics, forget about corruption, forget about bias and attacking an elected president. If they're that incompetent, you know, they shouldn't be in the FBI to begin with. So I think they ought to be fired here. So Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor, who was also Trump's ambassador to the UN, is saying that every American should see that interview and saying it'll send a chill up your spine as to what was happening there. Now, the FBI under Director Wray has issued a response to the rebuke from the Fisa court, which is kind of tepid, I think is a good way to describe it. And basically, Representative Mark Meadows sent a letter to the U.S. District Judge Rosemary Collier, the chief judge of the Fisa court, encouraging Collier to investigate the Fisa abuses that took place under President Obama. In particular, Meadows asked Judge Collier to act on the abuses by lovebirds Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. I mean, it's all out there. We know it really happened. But again, getting the government to turn on their own, it's virtually impossible. They're going to circle the wagons. They're going to protect each other because they're aware that somewhere down the road, they themselves may need protection. And so that's part of the understanding. We're not going to rat on each other. We're going to protect each other. And that's unfortunately a climate that allows corruption to continue. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier in the program, tomorrow there will be a court hearing on the Clinton emails to continue discovery, as well as what went on in Benghazi and why that was allowed to happen. Turning to the international news, Russia has deployed the Uran 9 combat robot into Syria. And so far, it seems to be working. It's a multi-purpose unmanned ground combat vehicle. And apparently, it can provide remote reconnaissance and fire support for a variety of tasks. It can be used fully autonomously on a predefined route, or manually operated by one man from either a truck control station or even a small backpack control station. So the rise of the robots. Jim Cameron had it right on that one here. Russian and Syrian air forces have launched more airstrikes in Syria in the past 48 hours than for all the rest of the month. And it's a massive aerial attack over the northwestern region of Syria, including several areas across the Idlib, Hama, Aleppo, and Latakia governorates. Now, remember yesterday we were talking about where Assad came on out and said, in order to get the Americans to leave Syria, one of the things they have to do is get rid of all the jihadists, because it's the fight against ISIS, Al-Qaeda that the U.S. uses as an excuse to stay inside Syria, even though the Syrian government doesn't want them there. The United Nations has not given the U.S. a mandate to be in Syria. It's just an illegal military occupation. More documents have surfaced exposing how the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons fudged their report on the 2018 Duma chemical weapons attack in order to make it sound like Assad did it, even though the story didn't make any sense right from the beginning. So WikiLeaks has come out with more documents about that. Now you begin to understand why the government is after Assange. They want WikiLeaks to go away. Well, even if they grab Assange, even if they succeed in extraditing him, which is now very much up in the air, WikiLeaks is going to continue. And there are always going to be leakers. And at some point, people are going to say, you know, there are so many leakers right now. They can't arrest and imprison us all. Because, first of all, we're engaging in our First Amendment right to share what we know with the rest of the world. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more whistleblowers coming forward on a lot of these issues that are out there where the government has lied to us. Because I can't imagine any real American being comfortable with a government that lies to us as much as this government does. All right, looks like everybody's really starting to gear up for a potential war. And over in Germany, apparently the Spangdahlem Air Base F-16s are participating in an Allied combat lethality exercise, which is designed apparently to enhance NATO partner capabilities, which is a sort of military speak for, you know, working together as a team, not getting in each other's ways. Now, Bulgaria has indicated they are now willing to host a NATO naval center. And the apparent agenda there is to try to contain Russia in the Black Sea, not let them get on out there. Everybody's making their moves here. The Russian General Staff is out there very concerned about all these NATO drills right along the Russian border, and they're interpreting it to indicate preparations for a large-scale conflict. Apparently their attitude is the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming. All righty. Russia is sending submarines over to the Atlantic at Cold War levels. We were talking the other day about the Bore, which is Russia's new, very stealthy ballistic missile submarine. And they're already in service. They're already going on out there. But apparently, Russia sent a monstrous fleet of submarines past British waters into the Atlantic Ocean, in which analysts described as a direct challenge to the United States. That was in October. Then in November, a similar submarine challenge was made near Scotland, as nuclear fast attack submarines twice staged underwater duels while also testing NATO defenses between Scotland, Iceland, and Greenland. just this gap that Russia would use to surge into the Atlantic from their northern seaports. All right, Turkey is still out there saying that if the United States recognizes the Armenian genocide, which Congress already has, the first thing they're going to do is acknowledge the American genocide against the Native American populations. And that if the sanctions continue regarding Turkey's purchase of the S-400, that Turkey could simply start closing down all these military bases in Turkey being used by NATO, including the Incirlik base, where NATO has an early warning radar system and the U.S. is storing nuclear weapons. So this has prompted a lot of articles. This is from Aleppo News, where they're out there saying, oh, come on now, Erdogan isn't going to shut down those bases. You know, it would be more downside for him than upside. Well, normally, yes, but Erdogan in the past has shown himself to be a bit of a loose cannon and to not always behave in the way that analysts think he's going to behave. All right, article coming out of Desert Peace. Israel continues to claim it is the good guy, and that's something that we have seen continuously, that the more Palestinian land Israel steals, oh, it's necessary for security. Israel prohibits Gazans from going to Bethlehem for the coming Christmas. Again, security concerns is the reason. You know, poor Israel, they're the victims. Poor, nuclear-armed Israel, they're always the victim here, and that justifies stealing West Bank land, illegal settlements, the attempt to annex the Golan Heights, the attempt to annex the Jordan Valley. It's all because we have to defend ourselves from all those mean people, those anti-Semite Jew haters who want Hitler to come on back and gas Jewish babies in the ovens. I don't know about you. I'm sick and tired of hearing about this. I'm sick and tired of the constant whining coming from Israel. Now, Israel at the same time has their hand out because they have been convincing Jews to leave Arab countries and come and settle in those illegal settlements in the West Bank. And so now they've turned around and they're claiming a total of $150 billion in compensation for the property the Jews left behind. In other words, you Jews come here to the West Bank, and then you countries that the Jews used to live in, you owe us for what the Jews were forced to leave behind. And apparently they're going out to Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya, and demanding all these billions of dollars. Well, I'm sorry, but you know, these Jews made the voluntary decision to go to the illegal settlements in the West Bank. It's not like these countries forced them out. They chose to go. And when you make a move like that, you make choices about things you need to leave behind. So we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Fox News, once again, we're showing the video feed from Battle Creek, Michigan. Once again, Trump is just packing them in. Not everybody's going to get in. And apparently some of these people have been waiting for hours in 15-degree cold to get a chance to see the president. And they're mostly basically saying this whole impeachment thing is a sham and it's a hoax. Again, one of these AstroTurf protests seems to be taking place outside the venue where they're saying, you know, Trump is destroying the Constitution, which is, again, it's another case of projection. It's the Democrats who have been acting unconstitutionally. They've cheapened impeachment. And the problem is, if they get away with this, it's not only a case of a duly elected president being kicked out of office without having committed a crime. It's basically going to hamstring all future presidents who will be very cautious about vetoing what Congress wants, lest they get hit with an impeachment accusation or 25th Amendment or whatever. So Congress is trying to usurp the authority of the executive branch here. And we're still not hearing that there's going to be an actual vote here. It doesn't look like it's going to happen before the end of the show here. Apparently there is a snow squall warning for the New York City area that just got issued here. All right, getting on back to the international news. The Israeli Justice Minister is accused of rigging appointments to shield Netanyahu. And so there's the struggle between Israel's government and judicial system, and it's exploded into this very public spat this week over the appointment of a new state prosecutor. Corruption charges against Netanyahu at the heart of the dispute. Justice Minister Amir Ohana's appointment of Central District Deputy Prosecutor Orly Ben-Ari Ginsburg as the new state prosecutor began a war of words between him and Avichai Mendelblit, the Attorney General, who disagreed with the choice. Mendelblit is saying that Ben-Ari Ginsburg is too inexperienced for the role, and then appealed to Israel's High Court, which early today froze the appointment. There's definitely an internal faction fight going on over there. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Rob in Illinois, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you got me?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, good. I didn't hear the beep. I don't know if you talked about it at all, if you mentioned it, or if you're even aware of it. I didn't hear it during the show, but did you talk about the omnibus bill that they passed, the House passed yesterday?
Are we talking about the defense bill or the NDAA, or you'd be a little more specific?
Well, there's several different, I've been trying to research this since this afternoon. One of the callers, and Alex Jones, who took callers today, and somebody said, hey, this new omnibus bill, and he started pointing out a couple different things that are like, they hide things inside this omnibus bill,
oh, yes, they do.
Planned Parenthood, funding Planned Parenthood, the Border Patrol, all sorts of different things, and one of the articles, it says it defunds, overseas abortions for foreign countries. Somehow they're defunding that, but they're still funding Planned Parenthood here in the United States. So anyway, this happened yesterday. They say that, the headline's 1.4 trillion, but it's actually 1.375 trillion, which is another omnibus bill that, remember, if you guys remember the first time Trump said he was signing an omnibus bill, he says, I'm going to do this, but it's the last time I'll ever do it, and I'm doing it for the good of the government and to help the military and to build the wall, and that's why I'm doing it, but I'll never sign another one. But he signed already. He signed, this is like the third one he's signing. Second or third one, I can't be exact here.
That's a disappointment here. I mean, when we talk about rebuilding this country and the blueprint for the new America, one of the things we have to get rid of is this idea of attaching riders to bills that have nothing to do with what the intent of the bill is. And one of the things we always need to be on the lookout for is Congress will introduce a bill for the improvement of our sidewalks and other purposes. And that's the red warning sign that somebody has stuck something in there. And what politicians like to do, what members of Congress like to do, is they'll find a bill that they know has to be passed, like military spending, and then they'll load it up with all these little riders that most of Congress may not even agree with, but they have to vote the military bill through, and as a result, some very bad laws get passed.
Sure. Look, it alarmed me when the caller called in Alex Jones again. First time I heard about the omnibus bill because nobody else is talking about it. Obviously, the mainstream media is going to talk about it because it's something they want. Here's Trump in the middle of an impeachment. They're coming down on this guy hardcore. Now, you think he'd be fighting back with them and everything he's got, but he's getting papers thrown in front of him. He's just like, okay, I'll sign it. I'll sign it. I'll sign it.
Yeah.
What's in these things? And it's almost like we're being fooled. It's like we're dragged into this thing. Everyone's like, so up in arms. We're the underdogs. Mike, we're groomed as Americans and other countries, I'm sure.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We got to do another commercial break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And over the break, I took a quick look. And basically what the omnibus spending bill was primarily about was avoiding another government shutdown. In other words, the government ran out of money. Despite all the money that you have been forced to give them, they keep running out. And so this bill was basically saying, well, we're going to borrow more money from the Federal Reserve, and your great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will have to pay it all back. But as Rob in Illinois was pointing out, there's a lot of garbage that's thrown into these bills because everybody knew this bill had to pass or the government was going to shut down. That's how bad laws get passed in this country. And it's something that we should not allow in the new America that we hope to build when the current government implodes. All righty, the Congress has rejected a White House request of $175 million to support the deal of the century. This is what they're calling this attempt to get the Palestinians to just go along and say, yeah, Israel is okay, and you know, we're going to stop agitating for our own country. And the argument coming out of Congress is saying nobody expects this plan to work. I don't either. The Palestinians aren't that stupid. And so they're saying, why should we spend money on something we know is doomed to fail? Well, one might ask that same exact question about Afghanistan, which we now know the Pentagon and civilian leadership knew that that war was unwinnable, but they have no problem throwing money at that. In fact, if there's one area in which there's bipartisan agreement in the Congress, it's spending more money. That's the one thing on which everybody agrees. You know, you're a bastard. Well, you're this here and everything. Well, let's spend more money. All right, sure, yeah, let's do that. It's amazing here. Okay, the human rights group Bet Salam is reporting that Israeli forces wantonly shot at a group of Palestinian children in Al-Jalazun refugee camp, injuring 2. Apparently, this happened back on the 17th of November when Israeli occupation forces entered this refugee camp to chase Palestinian children who had been throwing stones at them at the camp entrance. And they basically just went on in and fired live rounds toward the children, as well as rubber-coated metal bullets and tear gas canisters. Well, you know, if you're going to steal somebody's land and throw them all in refugee camps, you know, you just sort of have to expect you're going to get a couple of rocks thrown at you. Over in France, things are getting very, very intense. The ex-army chief is now saying that it's time for France to restore order, saying that this cannot go on like this, and talking about this transport strike, which is going to ruin Christmas for a lot of people. So General Pierre de Villiers told RTL Radio on Monday, we must restore public order, which is military speak for we're going to go on out and start clubbing people until they do what we tell them to do. So French police are firing tear gas, and they charge protesters as tens of thousands take to the streets to fight President Macron's pension reforms. And the issue here is, I mean, there's a lot of changes. The big one, of course, is France's government's plan to raise the retirement age to 64. And a lot of the French people who have spent their lives working and paying into the pension system, they're feeling cheated. They're feeling, you know, they got close to where they could retire, and then the government says, no, you can't retire. Our new policy is work them until they drop. Seeing a lot of that over here in the United States. Now, France's Minister for Pension Reform has just resigned, dealing a blow to Macron as trade unions staged a 12th day of strikes and prepared for more street protests against the changes. And this, of course, is being on top of the year-long Yellow Vest protests. So France is turning into a war zone, and apparently you've got the police on one side and the firefighters on the other. There's literally a battle of the emergency services, the first responders, none of which was reported on the corporate media other than the little blurb that we had on Fox News a while ago saying, well, we can't allow this sort of thing to happen here in the United States. I mean, you know, the people just getting out into the streets and demanding that the government do something nice for them. We can't have that. Who do they think they live in a republic or a democracy? This is fascism. You do what we tell you to do here. All righty. According to the People's Liberation Army Daily, Beijing's military mouthpiece, the Naval Aviation Unit, under the command of the Southern Theater Command, completed an early warning reconnaissance drill in mid-November. The naval commander Yang Liang told the publication, different from the exercises conducted last year on early warning reconnaissance, this drill was much longer in time span, put in a confrontational mode from the start. And basically, they're sending a warning that China is now prepared for a confrontation with the United States over the islands of the South China Sea. Now, China has just launched their second aircraft carrier. This is the first one built entirely within China itself. It's called the Shandong, was delivered and commissioned by President Xi Jinping. And basically, you know, it's not a huge supercarrier like the United States produces, but it looks like it's fairly capable. So China is now able to produce its own aircraft carriers. China and Russia are trying to lift the North Korean sanctions they helped install, but it's too late. And they're beginning to realize dealing with the United States can be very, very tricky because they went along with the United States imposing sanctions on North Korea. Now they're trying to go back to the United Nations and saying, maybe this was a bad idea, because it's made the situation worse, not better. But of course, the United States has veto authority in the Security Council, which means China and Russia are blocked from doing anything about it. And at this particular point, I think the U.S., their attitude remains the same. Do what we tell you to do. It's our way or the highway. And it is leading us to war and conflict. Now, everybody's trying to guess, you know, what was this mysterious Christmas gift that Kim Jong-un was hinting at a while back. And I saw all these stories all over the news about, well, you know, on Christmas, North Korea is going to launch a long-range ballistic missile at the United States. I seriously doubt Kim Jong-un is that stupid. Propaganda is definitely ramping up for more wars. North Korea, China, Russia. And ultimately, we're heading for a world war where there's going to be the United States and a few of their allies against the rest of the entire planet. And we're going to lose this one, people. Our military is bloated. It is hideously expensive. The weapons being produced by our defense contractors these days are ineffective pieces of junk. Our troops are poorly trained. Their morale is very low. The whole Fat Leonard scandal basically revealed our military command is compromised. They're corrupt. Can't win a war that way. Story that came out of deviantinvestor.com, the naughty list and grizzly bears. And it's basically talking about how the U.S. national debt has been growing and continues to grow. Back in 1913, it was $2.9 billion. In 1971, when President Nixon ended gold convertibility of the Federal Reserve notes, the national debt was $398 billion. And today, of course, it's grown to $23 trillion with a T. And the problem is politicians borrow and spend to reward their cronies and buy votes, and also, of course, to increase their personal wealth. Human nature changes very, very slowly. The article ends saying, can you name 3 congressmen or 1 lobbyist who advocate spending fewer currency units next year? And of course, nobody can, which means the debt will continue to grow until the dollar collapses. Somewhere along the line between now and then, the government will simply come on in and take everything that you own. Screaming, national emergency, we got to pay off the bankers. And of course, that's what the bankers want, because the whole purpose of a private central bank is to transfer the wealth of a nation and its people into the pockets of the bankers so that they own everything. And we will all wind up as tenants rather than citizens of the United States of America. And if you look at how privatization has failed to maintain the nation's infrastructure, having the bankers own the entire nation, it tells you what's going to happen. It's all going to start crumbling. It's going to start falling apart. Now, this story is a little bit alarming. Came out of Zero Hedge, where the U.S. official gold reserves auditor has been caught lying. And apparently this is a follow-on to an article that came out in March of 2018, basically saying that the audit procedures of the U.S. gold reserves from 1974 through 2008, the audit staff deviated from the auditing protocol, while internal control meant to prevent this was failing. And the audits and assay reports were destroyed. Decades, a significant share of the metal was excluded from verifications for no apparent reason. And the U.S. government went to great lengths to withhold information or spread false information about the audits. Now, back when we did America's Book of Secrets on the History Channel, we did an episode, The Gold Conspiracy, in which we talked about this. Is the gold really there in Fort Knox? Is it really there in the Federal Reserve of New York? Is it really there in J.P. Morgan? Or has it been snuck out the back door and rehypothecated or leased out? Now remember, there hasn't been an actual public audit of Fort Knox in something like 50 years. Now back in, I think it was the 70s, following Nixon's closing of the gold window, it wasn't really an audit, it was a press conference where the government took a bunch of reporters into Fort Knox. They opened up one vault that had a whole bunch of gold bricks just stacked up right against the door. Nobody was allowed to touch them. No assays or testing was done. And we now know that there are gold bricks floating around the economy with all the hallmarks of Fort Knox that have tungsten cores. It's like right out of James Bond's Goldfinger. Somebody succeeded in basically robbing Fort Knox. And here's the issue. We're not talking about the government's gold. That gold in Fort Knox is your property. It belongs to you, the American people. And if the government has mishandled that, that is a serious, serious breach of trust. All right, Alistair MacLeod is saying the world of fiat currencies faces its last hurrah. And it's talking about all these global banking crises that are basically brought about by having this debt-based financial system all over the world. Because the key problem with private central banking, and this is intentional, by the way, it creates more debt than money with which to pay the debt, until the debt crushes down the system. And as I said before, all the real wealth, the hard assets of a nation and its people, are transferred to the ownership of the bankers. The banks do not exist to serve the people or the nation. They serve themselves, aided and abetted by corrupt politicians who would sell their own mother for $1. Okay, and apparently there is concern being raised about how what used to be free and transparent markets are now starting to have the curtain drawn around them. The Fed is pulling this curtain around the financing of this so-called free and transparent market. And the public has no idea which Wall Street firms have received this $3 trillion or why they can't borrow it somewhere else. And this kind of obfuscation by the Federal Reserve could actually stimulate distrust in the U.S. banking system. Well, frankly, you shouldn't be trusting the U.S. banking system anyway. Because as Bernie said, the business model of Wall Street is fraud. If you haven't seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, you really need to catch that one. It's based on a true story. It's not a movie you're going to want your kids to watch. But it's basically how this guy became very, very rich by gaming the system. There is now a last-ditch attempt to stop the Nord Stream 2. The U.S. Senate has passed a Pentagon budget that includes sanctions on companies that are working on finishing the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. And the reason the United States is so opposed to that is right now, the gas pipeline from Russia to Europe goes through Ukraine, which gives Ukraine a great deal of leverage because they can always grab that valve and shut it. The Nord Stream 2 is designed to bypass Ukraine and remove that ability of Ukraine to dictate to Russia. Right now, Ukraine owes Russia a fortune for the natural gas they have been taking out of that pipeline. And so far, Russia's been very cool and very calm about not pushing that issue. You know, those pipelines, it's more than just money. It's more than just access to energy. There are geopolitical consequences as to where those pipelines travel and under whose control they are. And the United States sees the Nord Stream 2 as basically a threat to U.S. control over European energy markets. And if hostilities do break out between the United States and Russia in Europe, I guarantee you that Nord Stream 2 is going to get bombed. They'll blow that thing right off the face of the earth. All right, we're coming up here in a commercial break. When we come back, we'll be on the last segment of today's program. And stay tuned. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. And over in Great Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, through his spokesman, has announced they're working on a new relationship for the European Union that they hope to implement by January 2021. Well, Boris, good luck, but I don't think the EU is going to be very open to a new relationship because they were so much in love with the old relationship where Great Britain was a slave to Brussels. Apparently, the British government is also planning to outlaw any extension of the Brexit transition period beyond December of next year. And so we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, and this apparently was not entirely unexpected, Scotland is now going to push for a second independence referendum because of the results of the general election. And all I can say is this time the Scots have really got to be paying attention for vote fraud because that's what torpedoed the first independence referendum. And the vote fraud was just so obvious. It's not like they almost weren't even trying to hide it. They were trying to send a message saying, we don't care what you want. You belong to the British Crown, and we're going to make sure that you stay that way. And where's William Wallace when you really need him? Now, interestingly enough, Poland is signaling they may leave the European Union due to this row over judicial reform. And they're talking basically this is a fight between Poland, which thinks that they should decide what laws Poland should be operating under, and the European Union, which has gone way past the original promise of open borders and free trade and so forth. And the European Union is now saying, no, we're in charge. You do what we want you to do. So apparently Poland is getting ready to leave the European Union, and we're hearing other countries in the EU as well. So it's kind of like that old story about the bird on the wire, and Great Britain is that first bird, and takes off, and then the rest of them scatter. And I think that's what's going to happen here, which is why they're trying as hard as they can to establish a new union here on the North American continent with this U.S., Mexico, Canada treaty. And I think they're going to run into a little bit of problem with that because everybody has seen what the European Union did to Europe, to the European countries, and they're not going to want that happening here. Apparently, the Norwegian government has awarded an Islamic group 100,000 euros to convert a 100-year-old church into a mosque. And that is not sitting very well with Christians in the area because they like their church being just the way it is. And there is a helicopter flying over our roof right now at a very low level. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please take a moment to put a little something in our Christmas stockings because we've been good little girls and boys this year. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.